Yeah, so I'm like, man.
Hey everybody, let's find a seat so we can get started. All right. This is All Hail the Power of Jesus' Name. We're going to sing 4 stanzas this morning. All right? Good. All hail the power of Jesus' name. Let angels prostrate fall. Bring forth the royal diadem and crown him Lord of all. Bring forth the royal diadem and crown him Lord of all. Chosen seed of Israel's race, he ransomed from the fall. Hail him who saves you by his grace and crown him Lord of all. Hail him who saves you by his grace and crown him Lord of all. Let every kindred, every tribe on this terrestrial ball to him all majesty ascribe and crown him Lord of all. To him all majesty ascribe and crown him Lord of all. Oh, that with thunder's sacred song we at his feet may fall. We'll join the everlasting song and crown him Lord of all. We'll join the everlasting song and crown him Lord of all. All right, so when you came in, not only is there a March thing, but there's an April thing, because April is very busy for this group in particular, and there's some things on here that you need to register in advance. So just make sure you take one of these home and look at the instructions. If you want to be involved in it, please be involved with it. They're designed for you. All right. Our trivia question for today is very interesting. How many Scrabble players do we have in the room? Okay. Anybody can.
Not that good.
Anybody can
We
guess.
didn't hear it back here, Steve.
Well, then stop talking, Karen.
What did he say? Anyway.
I said, how many Scrabble players are out there?
Oh, no.
Okay. Is that good? Is that good? Can you hear me?
Yes,
No?
thank you.
Okay. All right. You don't have to know how to play Scrabble to answer this question. It's a guess type question. But you might know this. If you do play Scrabble, I don't know, because I don't play. All right. It's a number answer. And you have to raise your hand, but don't do it until I say go. Scrabble players know that there are how many 3-letter words that end with U on the official word list approved by the National Scrabble Association fraternity. How many words are 3-letter words that end in U? Take a wild guess. No.
5,
Angelique.
15,
Nope.
5.
Nope. Mike.
7.
No. He's gonna get it again.
Everyone that
Laura.
counts is 10,
No. Dave.
22.
No.
35,
Kathy.
35.
No. Karen.
12.
No. Russell.
1.
No.
No.
Ed. No. Shelby.
No, it doesn't matter.
All right. Angelique was the closest. It's 17.
So Steve, what are the
Russell's Bible study. But I will tell you this. This is another interesting fact. Among them is ulu, U-L-U, a type of knife used by Eskimo women to clean and skin fish. And it's the only three-letter word on the list that contains two U's. Shelby, don't forget that. Two. All right, so listen everybody. We don't have a microphone, so Donna's going to give her jokes, but you cannot be talking because she cannot talk over you. Okay? Donna. I said, I'm not going to yell. I said, don't yell. Just, if they don't talk, then you can hear you.
I missed y'all last week. I was a little under the weather, but I feel much better now. So. Okay, last night I went out to the store to pick up some last-minute items. After ringing up all the items, the cash register said my total was $95.29. I wanted a second opinion, so I went to the self-checkout. I got pulled over by the cop today. I was apparently his first speeder because when he got to my window, he said, "I've been waiting all day for you." I said I got here as fast as I could. He just let me go with a little laugh. As you get older, you have to stay positive. The other day, I fell down the stairs, and instead of getting upset, I thought, wow, that's the fastest I've moved in years. Last night, my wife suggested we spice it up a bit by playing doctor. So I put her on her bed, rolled her into the hallway, and ignored her for hours. That's what I do too. Okay, a man who just died is delivered to a funeral home wearing an expensive tailored black suit. The female blonde funeral director asked the deceased wife how she would like the body dressed. She pointed out that the man does not look good in black suits, and he is already wearing. The widow, however, said that she always thought her husband looked his best in blue, and that she wanted him to be in a blue suit. She gives the blonde funeral director a blank check and says, "I don't care what it costs, but please have my husband in a blue suit for the viewing." The women return to the next day for the wake. To her delight, she finds her husband dressed in a gorgeous blue suit with fine chalk stripes. The suit fits him perfectly. She says to the funeral director, "Whatever this costs, I am very satisfied. How much did you spend?" "There's no charge," the blonde funeral director said. "No, really, I must compensate you for the cost of the blue suit," she said. "Honestly, ma'am," the blonde said, "it costs nothing. You see, a deceased gentleman of about your husband's size was brought in shortly after you left yesterday, and he was wearing an attractive blue suit. I asked his wife if she minded him going to the grave wearing a black suit. Instead, she said it made no difference as long as he noticed he looked nice. So I just switched heads." It was a blonde. As the women were coming in, everybody's hair was blowing, and we got in a discussion about the hair. And it was funny that I have a joke here about somebody's hair. So this is a little long, but I'm going to read this to you. There was a woman that was starting to lose her hair. Quite a bit of hair was coming out. Every day when she washed it and brushed it, it would just keep coming out. She was a little concerned, but she was a real positive woman, wanting to stay positive about the whole thing. So one morning she got up. She only had 3 hairs in her head. She looked in the mirror and she said, "Well, I know what I'll do. I'm going to braid my hair today." So she braided her hair and just went on and had a good day. Well, the next morning she got up. She only had 2 hairs on her head. She said, "Oh my, how should I fix my hair today?" Well, I know what I'll do. I'll put it in a pigtails. So she put it in pigtails and went on and had a happy day. The next morning she got up and had one hair left on her head. Well, what am I going to do with this? How would I fix my hair? So she said, I'll have a ponytail today. So she had a ponytail and went on and had a happy day. Well, guess what? The next day she got up and didn't have any hair at all on her head. She said, well, thank God that I don't have to do my hair today. And the moral of this story is remember, every day may not be good, but find something good in every day.
Right.
Good morning. They say that March comes in like a lion, goes out like a lamb, right? Well, it is sure roaring out there today. I like the wind, and I like to have my windows down, but as I was going down Battlefield, my window down, I got blasted by sand from some truck coming by. So when I got on 64, the wind was coming from the opposite direction, so I just put my driver or my passenger window up. So yeah. So this morning, and yes, Karen, I gave everybody everything that we're going to go through today, so we don't have to worry about that. You made a comment last week. It was just funny. So we're in Matthew 14, starting at verse 22. And this is one that I think most people know, and it's always exciting to kind of go through it. But there's a few little things that I want to kind of explore as we get into it. Not too much, because this is one of those ones that's mainly just a story. There isn't a whole bunch of theology that's packed into it, or there's a couple miracles here, but you're not looking at something that you can really chew on too much. But there are some interesting things that you kind of grab a hold of. Can I get someone to go from 22 through 27 there?
Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid."
All right, so we have a couple of events that are happening here. What's the first thing that Jesus... What's that?
The wind. It was that wind.
It's the wind. Yeah, we got the wind out there today blowing. Hey, you know what's funny? You can't see air, for the most part. You only see the evidence of air. So when wind is blowing, you can't see the wind. You only see what's in the wind. So as I'm driving, like even right now, these trees are just moving and shaking like they're dancing. So yeah, it's really interesting. Some of them have got some big sway, but you just see the evidence of it. So it's interesting that the Holy Spirit is called Spirit. It's the same word in Greek and Hebrew, different words, but they have the same meaning of spirit, wind, and breath. So again, when you talk about the Holy Spirit, you're talking about something that is unseeable, it is untouchable, and yet you see the evidence of it. So I always like that idea of wind having those different meanings, the different words there. So here we have Jesus kind of doing his own thing. Why is he doing his own thing? And why is he telling them to go and he's going to stay?
He needs some alone time.
Needs some alone time. When did we last read about alone time?
While he was breathing, but that's what he was talking about.
Right. So just before this, same chapter, just before this, same thing. Jesus has to take his time. He's just like anybody else. He's just like you, me, people down the street, people across the world. When things happen, he's got to take some time to be by himself. He's got to take some time to breathe. He has to take time to pray by himself. He has to reflect. He has to gather his thoughts. I think sometimes that we think maybe Jesus had like this great, wonderful thought of that he's never thinking anything that would be considered difficult, maybe for us, but something that he's just not having to ponder things. Of course he pondered things. Of course he thought things. I imagine that Jesus even prayed to keep himself away from temptation, because it's not something that, if you say that Jesus didn't have to worry about temptation, well then we wouldn't have someone who could understand when we get tempted. So Jesus himself is tempted. He has to pray to kind of keep away from that. Maybe from getting angry in his grief. Maybe from getting angry that the crowds are always pressing on him. Because again, they're constantly coming to him. And the last time, did he ever get a moment to grieve? What happened when he went to that remote place?
The crowd followed him.
They followed him. So when he gets there, I can see him kind of sitting on a rock and looking up and just starting to pray, and then he hears a voice, and he looks over, and they start to come in, and he's like, we're going to have to get back to this some other time. And then in his compassion, again, there was that word, in his compassion, that gut feeling that boils up inside, he throws it out there of just, I need my moment, but I can get it later. I'm here for them. And then here he gets that moment. But interestingly enough, he tells them, okay, you guys go across, I'll catch up with you later. I'll get to the other side. Now, the Sea of Galilee is like a big oval shape, okay? Depending on where they were, I think they get to Capernaum after this. It's on the western, I believe it's on the western side towards the upper part. So it wouldn't have been like across the main part of the sea there. However, yeah, some of you can look in your maps. I could be completely wrong. But there's several different cities that surround that lake. And they're going from one area, which would have most likely the desolate place, because the word there immediately, a lot of times when you see, and then they did this, that's not necessarily the next thing they did, but it's a passage of time. Here, from verse 21 to 22, you're seeing immediacy. Here's this event, then here. Again, why Jesus has to take that time by himself, because he didn't get it before. So now he's got this event, it's getting towards evening, and he says, guys, I need my moment. So what does he do? What does he do after he's kind of finished with his time? What does he then have to do? What is his mission now? He's told them to do something, and he's got to do it too. What is it? He's got to join them. Where are they supposed to be? Across the lake. Do you think he knew that they weren't there? I can imagine so. In fact, I see them not being too far out. So what's kind of happening to the disciples? And again, this doesn't necessarily just mean the 12. There were most likely more than just the 12. But they're on this boat. What's going on in the boat? Why are they fearful?
Because there's a storm, and they're not making any headway getting across the lake because of the wind.
Now, why? There's a word that's used. Why are they not getting any further? Because of the wind. Because, I mean, if the wind was blowing, buffeted. Someone had the word against. Who read it?
No, mine said buffeted.
Yours said buffeted?
Because they against it.
By the waves because the wind was against.
Right. The word there is like contrary, meaning completely against. Okay? So here they are. If they're rowing against. If they're trying to use a sail, it's blowing them the wrong way. They're trying to get out, and it's wanting to push them in. So, of course, the way that the Sea of Galilee is situated between mountains, huge winds come down through that area. So no matter what they're trying to do, it's almost impossible for them to get across. Now, here's the fun part. This is the part that I have pondered for years and years and years, and I wonder if anybody else has thought about this too. So, during this time of night, he crosses the sea on the water. What's the water doing at this point? Choppy and waves. If I walk across this floor, what does it look like? Flat surface. What is the water not?
Flat surface, solid.
How do you think Jesus walked across that?
It's Jesus.
Probably stumble. Well, I don't see him stumbling, but there's two kind of ways I picture that. Whenever you think of Jesus walking on the water, you kind of picture him kind of walking straight, right? Just kind of flat. When you see the word there for ghost is also apparition. I think mine says apparition. It's the word phantasma. That's where we get the word phantasm. It could be ghost, apparition, not spirit in the way like Holy Spirit, but that which is intangible but is still able to be seen. Okay? So they're thinking that he is this thing. And I say, if the waves are doing this, I wonder if he's doing that too. Think about that. Him being on top of the wave. What's more miraculous? That he just walks straight across water and it kind of flattens up before him. Or if he's absolutely just walking as these waves go like this. And they see this ghost kind of going up and down. I don't think the waves are 10 feet tall, but they're getting pretty big and him kind of going like this. Wouldn't that be terrifying? If you see something coming straight at you, that could be, of course, very scary. But if I see something going up and down with the waves, who knows, And I've always wondered that. I've wondered, what is he doing in this situation? It doesn't really say. It just says he's walking on the water. It doesn't say he parts it and he makes this nice flat space and it's like Moses in the parting of the Red Sea. It kind of just says he walks on the water. That's one of those things that just kind of fun to ponder. But then
He took each step, the water would come up to meet him.
could be. And again, that's a really interesting thing. Maybe as he's walking, the water rises to meet him. Again, we're talking about a miracle here that is one of those things that you don't really see anywhere else. We're going to see someone else do it here in a moment, but it's one of those things that's really, really a miracle. Not something that can be maybe considered light, like a healing or something, but here's something that is so visual. You can't see someone gain their sight with their hearing or a limb get fixed necessarily inside. You see the evidence of it, but here is totally 100% a visual thing, not just a spiritual thing. It's visual. So he says something interesting. They say it's a ghost, and what does he say? It is I. Does anyone know what it is I means? It is I am. The words in Greek are ego, eime. Ego being a reference to oneself, and eime is I exist. He's not saying, oh, hey guys, it's me. He's saying, take courage because I am. It's the same reference that you see in Exodus 3:14. That's what I was looking up in your Bible. I want to make sure I had the right verse. Exodus 3:14, where he says, I am that I am. This is the same reference here. Jesus makes just like in John. Ego eime. I am, I exist. I'm this. This is not just a merely, hey guys, it's me. And I think sometimes translations can get very soft on some things because they don't want to make these heavy statements such as this. But this is Christ saying, guys, I'm God. Take courage. And his next statement, again, this is one that God says constantly, do not be afraid. This is one that angelic messengers are constantly giving to people. This is one that God is constantly telling his people through the prophets. Take courage. I am that I am. Do not be afraid. This is a statement, again, that can be applied to us in our lives. Even when we don't see a physical manifestation of Jesus doing something miraculous, floating on waves, or water meeting him, kind of like in a movie, I could see that happening, as it comes up, or whether it's flat in front of him, something very visual. No, these are things that we can apply to our life of Jesus states that I am that I am. We should always remember that. So then we come into my favorite guy. My favorite disciple because I'm so much like him in my failings and travailings, and my faith and my failure. I love this guy. So can I get someone to go from 28 down through 33, please?
And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. So he said, come. And when Peter did come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw that the wind was boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said to him, O you of little faith, why do you doubt? And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. And those who were in the boat came and worshipped him, saying, truly you are the Son of God.
All right. Who's doing what here? Who does what first? They see Jesus, he says, I am, guys. Who says what?
If you are, Peter says.
If you are. That's what he's saying. If you are,
To you.
call to me. In this moment, do you think Peter lacked that faith?
I think he did right then.
No.
He knew his voice. He must have known
He knew his voice. So then he hears come, and of course, when I think of the word come, when is that told to Peter previously? That we have read?
Come and follow me.
Come follow me. So he says, if you will, it's you, ask of me. And he says those words that I can imagine Peter remembered back when he was first called of, come to me. So he responds. Now he gets out of the boat, and then what does he do? Walks on the water. However he does it, he at the same time as Jesus walks on the water. In fact, I don't see Peter kind of being like, whoa, because again, that requires no faith to go, oh my gosh, where's his focus in this moment? Jesus. What does he not see in that moment?
The waves of the Lord.
Anything else. There's no concern. I can imagine him not thinking about the other disciples. I can imagine him not even thinking about the boat, just kind of jumping off. Not even thinking about the fact that there's water there. So not diving off, but kind of hopping off and saying, here's my Lord. And kind of going out there and walking. I can almost see him kind of moving a little fast. And then what happens?
Take his eyes off.
Down he goes.
Take his eyes off Jesus. Because it says, but seeing the wind. He sees the wind. I can almost see him moving. And as he shifts his gaze and realizing the waves are moving, trees on the shore blowing, he's, just like that. He thinks, oh my gosh.
We planned that.
Yeah. I'm on water. This is not something I should be able to do. And I see him kind of moving, and as he's moving, kind of like in quicksand, slowly sinking. And as he does this, he cries out, what does he say?
Save me.
Lord, save me. Whenever I hear those words here, I think of kind of a spiritual transition. I think sometimes in our lives, we can be so fixated on Jesus that we forget all else. And sometimes that can be really good. And we forget kind of where we're moving, but we're doing what we're supposed to do. And then we shift our gaze, just sometimes even a little bit. And we start to notice all the trouble all around Jesus, all the trouble all around ourselves, thinking about where we were in the past and the fear we had in the past. And now we apply that past fear into our future. And we start to fear going forward. All because we took our focus off of him. But that's what we have to remember. That we have to say those words. Lord, save me. And this is true even before we become believers. That we have a moment where we think everything's kind of good. And it takes that moment of us to kind of break down. A lot of people go through their life nonchalantly. They think everything's fine. They've never heard of Jesus. Things start to fail, and all of a sudden that light shines. And they realize something, and someone brings the message to them. There's my mother was a perfect example of that. Right when they needed it most. Bam! There he is ready for them. And in their brokenness, and the things that have happened in the past, all come rushing into that moment, and they say, Lord, save me. And he does. But here, Peter should know better. So what does Jesus do for him after he says, Lord, save me? What does Jesus then do? What's his next motion?
He reaches out.
Reaches out his hand.
You know, we don't know how far Jesus was away from Peter. So if you think about, he could only be a little bit from the shore. Or he could, he might be, a half a mile away or whatever.
Well, it does say the boat was far out. In fact, the word that's used there in the Greek is stadia, and that's about 600 feet or 180 meters to 200 meters. So you're talking if it's many out, they're out quite a bit. So they can still see the shore, but it's not like, they're probably, like you said, like about a mile out or so. It doesn't say how long they were
If Jesus
out there.
is further than arm length away, but he's able to reach out his hand and grasp Peter?
Hey, that's something I never thought about. If he just all of a sudden he's there. We know that he was close enough that they can be heard even over the wind. Although it's interesting, though, that whenever I think of Jesus speaking in these times, him saying "I am," I don't say him going like me. I am. I see it more like in the movies when either the big bad guy or the big good guy has that whole moment where they say something and it's that booming voice that I think of Lord of the Rings, and Gandalf and Bilbo are in the house, and Bilbo says, "I'm going to keep the ring, and I'm not going to give it to you." And Gandalf raises up, and everything gets dark behind him, even though he's in a little teeny house. And he goes like, "I'm not a conjurer of cheap tricks." It's this booming voice that Bilbo can only go, "Oh gosh," I imagine Jesus having this booming, resounding voice that carries over the wind and everything, so that they know exactly who this is. They know the command of their teacher, their rabbi. But yeah, that would be interesting of him all of a sudden being there. "Jesus, save me!" And as he's going down, boom, Jesus is right there. Yeah. But he says something to Peter I think is really interesting. What does he say to him? What does he call him? He kind of calls him a name. What's the name that he calls Peter because of all of this?
You have little faith.
You have little faith. Is that a name or a descriptor?
It's more a descriptor.
It's a descriptor, but not in the Greek. It's a name. He's not calling him, "Hey, your faith lacks." He's saying, "You are tiny faith. You are not just lacking, but your subsistence is little. This faith in you is little. You are the little faith one." It's not just, "Oh, you don't possess the faith to do this." It's a really derisive, derogatory term, almost a pejorative, that he gives out. Previously, when we see Jesus do what he's about to do, in terms of the wind and waves, he says, "Oh, you of little faith." It's the same thing. You tiny faith ones. This substance of who you are is small faith. Not that you don't possess it, but it's almost as if you can't possess it. Because remember, they don't get these miraculous powers till after the Spirit, and then their faith explodes. They don't have that yet. So their ability to believe and do the things that Jesus does with ease is made of nothing. Again, they haven't seen God. Jesus has. So his faith is so much greater than theirs that again, he can do these things that for them, they're tiny faith ones, like almost like a mustard seed, as he says, so small. So he says that, and then what happens when he gets in the boat?
Everything calms down.
Everything calms down. What does he, in fact, I can almost relate this to Moses. What does he not do in this moment that he did previously?
Talk to it.
He doesn't talk to the wind and waves. He doesn't say a word. In fact, when I think of Moses and the rock, the first time God says, "Hit the rock." Moses hits the rock, water comes out. The second time, God tells Moses, "Speak to the rock." He has to do something that doesn't even require emotion. Just water, or come forth, and it does a thing. And of course, Moses in that moment sins because he doesn't just hit it. I had a sermon called "Hit It Twice for Good Measure." Again, talking about faith. And he doesn't just hit it once like he did before. He's in his burning anger. He rages and he smashes that rock twice. And God says, "I'll tell you what, I'll give you the water, but I'm going to take the promised land from you. I'll give you the water, but you got to trade it for going in there. Sorry. Again, it's sinful. But here Jesus, in his faith, previously showing them it takes words. Now he gets in the boat, and without a word, the wind and the waves, it's done. Just like before they worshipped him, now they do the exact same thing. They worship him, and their response is, "You are certainly God's son. You are certainly begotten of God." Now, in that statement, do we find the statement God's son heretical or against our faith? No. We believe Jesus is Son of God, being a part of God, but also being one who is in subjection to his Father in the hierarchy of the Godhead. Now, in that, do you believe that that term, God's Son, was heretical for the Jews?
Yeah.
Why? they believe Messiah was God's son?
No, probably not.
No. For them, Messiah means anointed one. That's what Christos means. It means the anointed one. There is another anointed one. There are a couple of kings that are anointed. David is essentially Messiah as well, but not the Messiah that's the coming special one. They didn't believe that he was supposed to be God. To them, when Jesus says, I am, they're like, whoa, hold on. God's not a man. It's not possible that there are two gods. We're monotheistic. There's only one God. And in Jesus saying that I'm God's son, or the Son of Man, is essentially him saying, oh, I'm one with God, guys. And they didn't like that. But the disciples, again, like when Peter makes his prophetic statement that you are the Christ, you are the anointed one, you're the Messiah, in saying that, they do the same thing kind of here. Surely you are the Son of God. Do you think they really understood that proclamation? You think they really got that? Why would you make a statement that is so blatantly, obviously profound in that moment? Why would they say that?
They were in awe. That's what happened.
They're in awe of what happened. I can imagine. Now imagine a lot of these guys are young. This is before 30 AD. Okay, a lot of these guys lived to 60 AD, 70 AD. So that's 30, 40 years hence. A lot of people at the time didn't live past 70, so these guys are very young. A lot of them are probably in their early 20s, if not even teenagers, because they're still working with their fathers. They don't have their own family. We know that Peter, of course, has his own family, and several others do, but they're still working with their parents because they have to, because they don't have their own trade yet. Now, when you make a statement like that, I see kind of young people. And how do young people act? Oh, what'd you say? Say it again.
Brashly.
Well, I was thinking brashly, yeah. But the same word, brashly. They're so quick to make a statement. They're so quick to say that, oh, that's awful. I can't stand that. And 5 seconds later, that's not so bad. Not a lot of wisdom there. Or them say, wow, this is really, really great. And 5 seconds later, after they've had bacon-wrapped Brussels sprouts, and the first 2 were really good. Oh man, I could eat 10 of these, and they get to the 5th one and go, no, I'm not, that's me, I did that. The first one I kind of pulled off the tray, give it a shot. Oh, that's the most wonderful thing I've had in my whole life. I grabbed 4 more. Number 2, oh, that's so good. Number 3, number 4, I don't know, I'm not touching number 5 now. Young man in my late 20s. Yeah, but trying new things. But yeah, young people are so quick to make these assumptions, so quick to make statements, so quick to say, if you call to me, if it's you, I'll come to you. So fast. So fast. And yet, the end result is them sort of not having made a good decision. Here they make this statement, and I don't see them making the statement like really having that wisdom and ultimately knowing what they're saying. But saying, wow, he's got to be the guy. We saw him do this wonderful thing. That's it. This is number 2 for these waves. I don't even think they might have been thinking about that at the time. But we of course have scripture to see it. But for them, it could have been a year or 2 previously. So just saying, wow, this is incredible. And they make that statement. And I love how Jesus interacts with them. You don't see him kind of rebuke them after that. You just see them kind of go for it. Can I get someone read from 34 to the end of the chapter there?
When they had crossed over, they landed at Gennesaret. And when the men of that place recognized Jesus, they sent word to all the surrounding country. People brought all their sick to him and begged him to let the sick just touch the edge of his cloak, and all who touched it were healed.
Why would they beg to touch his cloak? I want you to think about the Brad Pitt analogy.
I
Or
was
whoever
thinking
you're-
because he was celebrity.
He's celebrity. He's celebrity. Is it okay to touch him?
No.
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 You don't just go around grabbing Brad Pitt or Angelina Jolie. You're talking lawsuits. But if you go up and you can just touch something they've touched, or touch the fringe of their garment, I can see like rock stars and or like Taylor Swift. There's a good example. Taylor Swift. And the girls going bananas go, oh, and they reach up on stage and they touch her shoe and they, I won't wash this hand ever again. And then 10 years from then, they got black hands and they were washing them. This is the hand that touched Taylor Swift.
Or just getting a guitar pick, you know.
Guitar picks. Isn't that wild? I watch these guys take and they just fling them. I go, you could buy that for 10 cents at a guitar store and just put somebody's name on. I don't know. It's something else.
I'm thinking of Elvis and his scars.
Yeah, that kind of thing. That whole, well, see, that's something a little more tangible. Yeah, guitar pick's something so small, but yeah, I can see a scarf being something that well, it's gonna lose its smell over time. But you just want to get up to Jesus and just touch the fringe. In fact, I think some of them say hem, the very bottom. Not even like grabbing at his sleeve or touching like the main part of his cloak, but just even getting, as they're prostrate before him, just kind of touching. Just the fringe. And what's the result of that and why? Why? They knew he could do it. And not only did they know he could do it, but what else could do it? Because it says they just want to touch the garment. Why?
Because they know it, they've heard all the stories.
How great does the faith have to be for you to go to a doctor and say, hey doctor, prescribe medication, do a surgery? Does that require a lot of faith? Sometimes. Does it require so much so if you have terminal illness that you think you're going to be cured 100%? Sometimes that takes a lot of faith. What would take even more faith? Touching the stethoscope of a doctor to believe you're going to be healed? Do any of you believe you could do that? So how much faith would that take to say, if I just touch his stethoscope, if I just touch the little whatever thing he puts in your ear, if I just touch the pen that he writes with, I'm going to be healed. Think about the amount of faith that would take. That would take every part of your being. I don't think that we could do that anymore. I don't think, well, see, wait a minute. But see, these people have only heard stories. They haven't actually seen it. And yet they still have the faith.
Is this before or after that bleeding woman had a bleeding problem?
That's, it's around the same time, because remember, these aren't necessarily written in order unless they're given like immediately after. Typically they're written in an order that's a little more loose. So a lot of the stories you'll see in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the synoptics that we talked about, you'll see how they kind of have a similar order, and then John will have it completely out of order. Some of these are the same way. It's just the stories that they're telling as they remember them, and then when the other writers go back and see, oh yeah, I remember that story, but I remember more detail. And then they write more detail. That's what you're talking about here. So it could be at the same time, it could be about the same time, but what's the important part is that these people had so much faith, just like she did, that all I have to do is just touch a part of this guy I've only heard about, and I'm going to be healed from that. And I think the significance of that is just extremely immense. That again, there's a contrast there between the disciples and their fear, and Peter having his fear, and they know Jesus. They've seen Jesus. They've seen the miracles. They've seen him do these things, and their response is fear. Peter's is save me because he's falling, and yet the faith of these people is I just touch his garment and I'm healed. The difference is so vastly incredible.
But don't you think the disciples in the boat wouldn't have been that fearful if Jesus was in the boat with them?
Well, once he gets in the boat.
Yeah, but
I'm talking about before the
he
boat.
wasn't anywhere around when that storm started up. So that's why they were so fearful that they were afraid the boat was going to flip them out.
But even think before that. They're fearful when Jesus is down below decks. He's saying you shouldn't have even been afraid of that. So they should have known how to row a boat in a storm like that. They should have known how to take care of it, or they should have gone back to the other side. They made poor decisions, and their faith is weak, and hence why they're afraid. And then, of course, seeing an apparition, I can only imagine, oh, I'm dead. I'm dead. Night coming, I'm dead. But again, we take a lot of this. I apply a lot of myself when it comes to kind of how familiarity breeds contempt Have you ever heard that? Or familiarity breeds resentment. It's the same kind of thing where they're aware of who he is and they've seen him do all this stuff. But then these people who haven't just have heard these miraculous stories, whereas the other guys are kind of doing what we read about with the hometown people. They're kind of going, well, that's Jesus. He's my bro. He's the guy I hang out with all the time. I've seen him eat. You guys haven't seen him eat. You know, he eats kind of weirdly. He's always just kind of doing this, and then he takes a bite. And man, I'll tell you, we never run out of rolls. But that's a familiarity there, and yet these people have no familiarity with Jesus. They just hear these stories, and boom, they're there. And I absolutely love that. So we're going to end there for today. Does anyone else have anything else for all that? I just love talking about faith of people.